Good afternoon. I'm Petty Officer Kate Kilroy, Assistant Public Information Officer for the Titan Marine Board of Investigation. Today marks the final day of the public hearing, and we are here to answer your questions as the investigation into the loss of the Titan Submersible continues. In a few moments, Titan Marine Board of Investigation Chair, Mr. Jason Neubauer, and Lieutenant Commander Tom Whalen, MBI's lead investigator, will be available to take questions for no more than 20 minutes. To ensure everyone has an opportunity to ask a question, please limit yourself to one question and one follow-up, and please do not talk over each other. We're committed to helping you understand this process with clarity and transparency, and our goal is to answer your questions and share what we've learned. When called on, please state your name and media affiliation before asking your question, and I will call on reporters in turn. Now, I'd like to introduce Mr. Jason Neubauer and Lieutenant Commander Tom Whalen.
Thank you, Kate. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. The testimony gathered over the past 2 weeks has been critical, but there is still more work to be done as we move into the next phase of our investigation. Our commitment to transparency remains a priority, and our final report will be essential in shaping future safety standards. I'm now ready to take your questions. Yeah, that's part of the process. You know, if we see immediate issues, and we already have seen some in the Coast Guard, and I'll give you an example. This OSHA Whistleblower Protection Act, we have already changed processes at Coast Guard headquarters so that if an email is received, it goes to several people, including the person that is on duty. So that's just an example of something we've already modified that we've identified through the Marine Board that is an issue. Otherwise, we also have other methods, safety alerts, we have marine safety information bulletins. If I determine that there's something immediate from what we've heard during these 2 weeks, I'm gonna go back to Coast Guard headquarters and make sure that we get that information out to the marine industry immediately. Yes?
Ann Emerson, Channel 4, here in Charleston and Sinclair Broadcasting. Do you believe that you have enough from what you've heard over the last 2 weeks to recommend any criminal charges? And if so, who are you looking at charging? Who will you be recommending charges against?
Detecting potential criminal acts is part of the charge to the Marine Board investigation, but a recommendation would come after a full analysis of the factuals that we've collected. So if in the end we determine that there may be criminal activity, that would be part of my recommendation to the Commandant of the Coast Guard. The Commandant of the Coast Guard would make a final decision to make a referral to the Department of Justice. So I really can't comment on who might be charged or any further detail beyond that. And if there were a criminal investigation conducted, it would be completely separate from the administrative investigation, which is the Marine Board. Yes?
James and Lawyer, you too. I was wondering, how long until we can expect a public report during that whole investigation?
That's a difficult timeline to predict at this time. We have potentially more evidence collection to do, and that's going to be some basic follow-ups from information that we learned here during the 2 weeks. After that point, we go into a very detailed analysis mode, and that's when we formulate the what we hope will be impactful safety recommendations to approve the entire framework of the maritime domain. That can take a while. And after we do our report, the Commandant of the Coast Guard will have to have an opportunity to make a final action decision on every recommendation that we make. So that process can take several months. My priority is to get this investigation done expeditiously because I feel there are global issues at stake. So it'll be my priority to expedite that process, but I cannot give you a timeline. Yes.
Channel 4, I wanted to ask you if there are a number of witnesses that come to mind that we did not hear from today, including the widow of Stockton Rush, suppliers who are involved in actually creating and making this whole. Tell me how we're going to be able to hear their testimony and when that will be available
I think the key to remember is a Marine Board investigation does not have to obtain testimony from every witness. As long as we obtain factual data that leads us to what we need to determine for the causal factors and any other factors involved in the investigation, that's the goal. So I'm not going to comment on individual witnesses, but if we have the factual data from the company that we need through forensics, if we've talked to other witnesses that can give us the information we need, it's possible that we don't interview every witness that has been identified as potential for the investigation.
Following up on Sam's question, after these 2 weeks are finished, is there any expectation that there might be more hearings like this for you guys?
That is a good question. There is a potential for future hearings. I've done an investigation in the past where we had 3 hearing sessions as we determined we needed more witnesses and more information. We can also take other means. We've done minor interviews with witnesses that did not have a lot of information to provide before the public hearing was conducted. So we have evidence that will be published in the eventual report from witnesses and other data collection sources that you have not seen here during the hearing. It's always my aspiration to publicly display all of the information publicly, but just because of this volume of the evidence and the witnesses involved, that's not always possible. So that is my answer. You might see some individual data collection depositions. It could be another hearing session, probably very shorter, but it's hard to say at this point. How would you characterize the volume of evidence that was presented here today? When you go sit down to do your final report, how much of what happened in these 2 weeks? What's the proportions in that? You make a good point that I have never seen the volume of evidence that we've obtained for another investigation that we have for this endeavor. And the main person processing that evidence has been my lead investigator, Lieutenant Commander Whalen. So I'd like to pass that question to him at this time.
So you had asked about the volume of evidence that we've collected over these 2 weeks. So,
yeah, and so when we see the final report, how much of that final report is coming from these hearings? If you could give a proportion or percentage.
well, it's hard to quantify in the fact of that this, from up to this date, a lot of the evidence that we've collected and evidence that we've collected over these past 2 weeks will all be in the final report in some way, because we feel that to get to be able to make our opinions and our analysis, which will lead us to our conclusions and then drive our recommendations, is based on the facts. And everything that we've determined in this last 2 weeks is now a fact in our investigation.
There were some very interesting points made today, allegations that were made by one of the witnesses about actually looking for ways to circumvent the process, and allegations against specifically Stockton Rush and how he would have circumvented some of these. How far are you going to be investigating how that line of investigation went? Like, how much will you be looking into some of these allegations that you've heard during these hearings against other people, including, I think, in that allegation it was against a congressman. We don't know who that is, but are you going to be investigating where that actually ended up?
So all of the facts or allegations that were made within this investigation, we will analyze those, and to the depth at which we will, if it has any implications, or if it has an implication on our investigation, then we will look into it.
I did have a question about the alleged lightning strike in 2019 behind the capside. Are you guys going to be able to confirm whether or not actually a lightning bolt did strike the hole, or is it going to stay?
We'll do our best to confirm any alleged incident. If we are able to confirm, we will. We do know that that was on the original hull, or that we called it throughout the hearing, the prototype hull. It was intended to be used on the Titanic expeditions, but we do know that the second hull, which was manufactured after that lightning strike, was the Titan hull that was used in the 2023 expedition.
I'd like to just add some additional information to that question. We did get the opportunity to examine that hull at the Everett Port facility, and I personally don't remember seeing any scorching marks from a lightning strike. So it could be some alternative issues, like sometimes when you're in close proximity to a lightning strike, the electronics can suffer damage without the vessel taking a direct hit. So there are a lot of factors and unknowns there. So I would be very surprised in the end if we can ever say definitively if that hull was struck by lightning.
I do have a question, whether or not the Marine Board of Investigation, through your investigations, are you able to give us your impression of the people that were involved with this? And again, I'm speaking about the CEO of OceanGate, Stockton Rush. Are you able to, at least in your final analysis of this situation, are you going to be able to give us your impression of what was his mindset when he took his passengers down the Titanic? I think it's what we really want to know is why this happened. Are we getting to the crux of why he did this, despite what we're now hearing was a mountain of allegations, I'll say now, of problems with that vessel? Are we getting to the bottom of it?
Well, yes, I think the transparency of the hearings provides a lot of information to the public on some of the potential motivations of Mr. Rush and OceanGate. But certainly part of our investigation is trying to get into the mind of who was the master of the vessel and the CEO, which was the same person in this case, and understand what would push the individual to do the operations they were conducting. So that is absolutely something, that's why we went as deep as we did into the company, the entire existence of the operations, to try to determine the precursors, and then to the ultimate operations that led to the accident voyage. So that will absolutely be part of the report. Human factors play into about more than 90% of all accidents we investigate. And we investigate over 3,000 a year. So it tells you that the human element is always or almost always in play for an investigation. And it is important to figure out that aspect. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you for being here today. We appreciate it.
Thank you all for being here today. Your dedication throughout this public hearing, your participation has been an essential part of this investigation. I'll be available after the press conference for any questions related to logistics or media coordination.